Suzana is one of the founders of Conscious Living Spiritist Group in Florida and the current president of the Spiritist Federation of Florida, where she has worked for more than 10 years in several positions. Suzana is an active worker of the Spiritist movement in Florida and in the U.S., and the main focus of her work is to assist in the dissemination, so important, of Spiritism in English. Suzana will be talking about conquering true power. And with that, Suzana, please come forward. Thank you.
My better half told me that conquering true power was not the best use of the word in English, so I changed to the meaning of power. And good morning, everyone. It's interesting. I was reflecting this morning as I was driving or being driven over here. How would I start this lecture? I come from Miami after a week without power. I thought that would be a good way of starting it. And that's what my house looked like, dark and hot. Very hot and very dark. And so I experienced anxiety, fatigue, and all the challenges of being without power, powerless, for 1 week. The power came back, the light came back yesterday. So let's shift to the spiritual meanings of that, right? So when you don't have power, that's exactly how you feel. In darkness, fatigue, anxious, and probably like something like in hell, hot as hell. So, but let me see, how are we going to change this here? I'm not sure if oh, there it is. So, but we're going to talk about a little bit of a different meaning of power. And, so we want that type of power that will bring us light, correct? And these are some of the persons that I think are very powerful people in a very positive way. So our goal this morning is going to be, like, once I learn how to maneuver this thing in the right direction, it will be to, here we go, to explore the true meaning of power. Is it good to have power? Is it bad to have power? What does it mean? How do we use power? Do you want to have power? Is it good to be powerful? How do we feel when we are powerless? What power truly means? So hopefully we'll answer these questions today. And I want to start with this statement by Abraham Lincoln when he says, "Nearly all men can stand adversity, but if you want to test a man's character, give him power." Right? So we just went through some pretty significant adversities, material adversities in Florida. And, but much worse than any physical hurricane or the more hurricanes that we go through. And if you're a psychologist, if you do fraternal counseling, or if you're just living and talking to people, you realize that people go through situations of horror in their lives and they are resilient. We think that we are not going to survive, but somehow we find the power and the ability to survive and to transcend difficult times. But when we give someone power, that's a very, very challenging human experience. And we see that a lot of times. We see that when we see people who have little power, they rise to a position of power and they start acting in the ways that they condemned before in others. Why is that? And the problem with power is this. Power gives us many times an illusion of grandiosity. right? So it makes us feel a lot of times that we are much bigger than what we are. And you can think about that. So if you have power, a lot of times you would treat it in life slightly different. If you have the power of beauty, you can seduce. If you have the power of money, you can buy, right? So people treat you a little differently. Sometimes when I have a patient that comes to the hospital and it's a VIP patient, we are told it's a VIP patient. So what are you telling me? That I should treat this person any different than I treat every single other patient that comes to my care? That's basically what you're being asked for, right? So when you have power, we tend to feel that we are bigger than what we are. And you may say, well, I'm not powerful, I'm not rich, I'm average beauty, I'm not, but we all have power in our lives because we influence other people, because we are nurses, doctors, professors, we are parents. So we have power, and we practice our power, we use our power. So it's important for us to understand that power, the experience of power, is dangerous because we are disconnected from the true source of power in our lives, which is God. So because we are so disconnected from our essence, we use power to feel that we're worth it a lot of times. So it's a misuse of power. And it's a challenging experience to be able to have power and to use power in a constructive, in altruistic way. Okay, this is so complicated that Joana de Angelis, in this book called Surrender to God, which is an outstanding book, unfortunately not in English yet, but it's an absolutely beautiful book by Joana. She has a chapter that's called The Torment of Power. And in this chapter, she tells us that power provides us with privileges. And so it's very challenging for us. And the persons who have power, they bear great responsibility. But then she goes on to say something else. She says, the guarantee for the successful exercise of power is found in the moral structure of the individual, the capacity of discernment in order to avoid idolatry and in order to avoid competitions that corrupt the soul. So here she gives us the key for the use of power. In order to use power constructively, we need to have a moral structure on the base guiding the use of power. So I brought you a little video of one of those persons who you saw on the opening slide, and she's going to talk about power. And the video is called The True Meaning of Power.
I believe that we must change the ideology of being powerful, because we think that a person with guns, with money, is powerful. But we have developed this idea in our mind. And if we change it, and I think we must change it, a country with more literate and educated people, a country with more skillful people, a country which has given equal rights to its citizens should be considered the superpower, not the country with atomic bombs and millions of soldiers. This is what I believe.
There it is, young Malala speaking to us using the power of speech and using the power of her soul to deliver the meaning of true power to all of us. So let's continue to think about what does the relationship between power and happiness. So does the power of beauty equal happiness. There's the power of strength, the power of youth, the power of wealth, the power of professional success, the power of ownership, being able to own your own house, your car, the power of higher education, of being able to have your many letters after your name, for example, the power of being influential. Do these things equal to happiness? Do they bring happiness? And I saw some people already shaking their heads that no. But okay, so maybe no. But is it wrong to pursue them? Is there a problem in pursuing them? No, not at all. They are very good. Okay? So let me give you an example. The power of wealth. A good generator in Florida costs about $14,000. The one that can power up your house with light, AC, and all the commodities and everything else. I'm looking into buying a generator that costs about $1,500 because it fits my budget, but not $14,000. But I did went to dinner in the house across from my neighbor, whose mother is very wealthy and could buy a generator for them for $14,000. We all had a good barbecue that day, and we had dinner inside the living room with air conditioning and provided us rest and comfort. So it does not buy happiness, but I'm going to tell you, it provides comfort. And many times, and I say this by experience, and let me tell you, I was very envious of my neighbor for the whole entire week, okay? So this is human, and this is it. So we need to talk about those things for what they are, right? So all those things are okay, and we should seek to take care of ourselves, right? But we see that there is an use of all these things, and a lot of times people believe that you must have some of these things. You can be successful and powerful if you're young, if you have the strength, right? So even us spiritists, right, we are like laughing a little bit about this, but although we know that the power is in the spirit, we are very attached to those things too, and we drive some power and sense of worth from them, although we know that they are temporary and there is no true power in them. But we do, okay? And we're going to spend the whole day talking about some of those things today. So going back to Joana de Angelis, she says that false concepts of happiness lead human beings to behaviors completely opposite to the blessings they desire. So it's really, really important, if we are seeking happiness, and if we want to have true power in our lives, in order to fuel and to deliver our happiness, we need to know, what constitutes happiness. And we need to be aware of the meaning of life and the choices that we are making along the way. So she reminds us that the physical realm is the realm of illusions and fantasies. And the spiritual realm is the one where we come from and to where we will return. So this is an illusion to some extent, right? So nothing that is material is real. Nothing that is material is real. So this is the beginning of our journey here. And in this other book, Inner Enlightenment, Joana has a little story about a traveler. He is traveling, and he's in this area where he hears that there is this very, very wise man, and he wants to meet the man. And so he takes a journey of like a few hours to go find the man. And when he gets to the man's house, and he heard so much about him, he had so many expectations about meeting this man. When he gets to his house, he's completely disappointed, because as he enters the house, there's nothing in it. And so he says to the wise man, "Where are your belongings?" And the wise man looks at him and says, "Where are yours?" So, "Well, I'm just traveling." He says, "Me too, I'm just passing by." right? So this is the power of awareness. This is the power of awareness. This is the power of knowing exactly who you are, where you are. What is the meaning of being here? What is the meaning of our lives? So that wise man had the power of knowing. And so we are going to reach out to our friend Eckhart Tolle, one of my favorite authors, in this book, A New Earth, where he's going to tell us the following. You can enjoy and honor things of this world without giving them an importance and significance they don't have. You can participate in the dance of creation and be active without attachment to the outcome and without placing unreasonable demands upon the world. Fulfill me, make me happy, make me feel safe, tell me who I am. The world cannot give you those things. And when you no longer have such expectation, all self-created suffering comes to an end. All such suffering is due to an overvaluation of form and unawareness of the true dimension of the self. So this is a great passage of the book that talks about attachment. That's what it talks about. It talks about our attachment to the world of forms and expecting the material realm to fulfill you. Expect the material realm to give you the sense of worth that should come from within. Now, one of the greatest sources of human suffering is fear. Fear of what? Fear of losing. Fear of losing what? Everything. We fear to lose the things that we possess. We fear to lose people. So fear of loss is one of the great sources of suffering. Pain is, as our Buddhist friends tell us, is part of our normal experience. But suffering comes from what? From resistance, from non-acceptance, and from attachment to what cannot be attached to, because it's material, because it's transient. Very well. The other thing is that we need to be aware of is our expectations. So Joanna once more helps us when she says, do not expect that the world will change, rather change the way you deal with the world. Become a reference point for future transformations that will take place in favor of a renewal society. That's in line with what Gandhi says. Be the change that you want to see in the world, right? So 2 starting points for us in this search for true power. Awareness of who we are and awareness of what the material world is and represents to us. The material realm is a means, is not the end. It's here for us to utilize in order to seek enlightenment. But it's not meant to give us meaning per se. The meaning comes from within, right? And the second thing is to focus on, as we move in life, to understand that we cannot change what is around us. The change needs to start from within us. And once we change, our change may inspire the person who is next to us. So that is the only true power that we have, is the power to work in our own inner self. Very good. So let's go back to Eckhart Tolle. And here he he gives us some tools for an enlightened living. So here we are going to look at 3 little stories. They're going to help us to gain some power, some true power, right? So the first one is a story about non-resistance. And it's the story about a wise man. You're going to see that all the stories have a wise man, which is a tip for us. The true power comes from being wise, right? So it's the story about a wise man. He was extremely well respected in the town that he lived in. And next to him, there was a family with a young lady. And the young lady becomes pregnant. So the parents are furious. And they put a lot of pressure, and they want to know who was the father. And in the midst of her despair, she says that the father was the wise man who lived next door. So the parents go to the wise man's house, and yelling in anger, they accuse the wise man of fathering the child. He listens to it, and after they finish, he looks at them and he says, "Is that so?" They leave. A few months later, the child is born. They go back to the wise man's house and they say, "You are the father, he is the child, you take care of him." He looks at them and he says, "Is that so?" And he takes the child. He takes care of the little baby for a whole year. 1 year later, the girl regrets what she did, and she tells the parents the truth. The parents, now ashamed, go back to the wise man's house, apologize profusely, but say, "Look, you're not the father, so we need to take this child away." And the wise man once more looks at them and says, "Is that so?" And gives the baby back to the family. So what does that story is telling us? Life is going to bring us all type of circumstances. And so this story is a story of non-resistance. Life brings you and is there for a reason. Non-resistance does not mean passivity, lack of action. In fact, he acted. He took care of the baby for a whole year. He loved that baby, and he provided that baby with the best that the baby needed in that moment. So, but he did not resist what life was bringing him. He rode along with life. And in there is an incredible power. The power that will take much of the suffering that we experience in our life. So if we're seeking happiness, the power of non-resistance. In Spiritism, it means the power of trusting God entirely, of understanding that God is in control and that the universe is at all times conspiring for our happiness. It's the power of faith. The power of faith. But then there is another story, the maybe story. And the maybe story speaks to us about non-judgment. So, guess who? Another wise man receives this gift out of nowhere, and he receives this marvelous, wonderful, brand new car. His friends says, "Oh my gosh, you're so lucky that you got this amazing car." He looks at them and he says, "Maybe." A few weeks later, he's driving the car and someone crosses the red light and hits the car very badly, has a total loss of the car, and ends up in a hospital. The same friends go visit him and say to him at this time, "How unlucky you were." And he looks at them and he says, "Maybe." A few days pass by, and perhaps a hurricane like Irma went through the city. And you see I'm a little traumatized, right? So I'm processing here as we go. So, and there is a devastation on the city, and his house is affected. The friends go back to the hospital and say to him, "My goodness, how lucky you are that you were in the hospital and you weren't home." And he says to them, "Maybe, maybe." So what is the teaching here? The teaching is that we should not judge or label the circumstances of our lives, and we do that all the time. I'm going through something horrible. Maybe. I'm going through something wonderful. Well, maybe. We don't really know. But at the very end, everything is conspiring again for our happiness. And what we judge as bad, as horrible, a lot of times is a way of God saving us from something much worse, many times from our own selves. And so the ability, the power of non-judgment. And I'm reading a book right now that I am liking very much. It's called The Upside of Your Dark Side. It's really a great book. It's completely evidence-based, all based on researches in the area of psychology. So it's a very robust book. And what the authors here suggest is that our pursuit in life shouldn't be the pursuit of happiness, but the pursuit of wholeness. And happiness will be a consequence of wholeness. And by wholeness, what they mean is our ability to embrace every single feeling without labeling and without judgment. So, anger, for instance. Anger is not a negative feeling. Anger is a necessary feeling. Guilt is not a negative feeling. Guilt is a necessary feeling. Imagine if we would hurt someone and feel nothing. Right? We need those feelings because they are telling us something. So wholeness is the ability to embrace all that is in us without labeling. And the people that can sit more comfortably with all that is, all the feelings, they experience greater levels of happiness. Because in the judgment, there is a harshness that takes some of our happiness. But let's go to the other little story. It's a story that speaks about non-attachment. This time it's not a wise man, it's a king. And the king lives his life between happiness and despondency. And any little thing that happens to him makes him immediately angry and desperate and anxious, and he has this outburst of feelings, and he's tired of living like this. So he decides to look for the wise man. So he goes and talks to the wise man, and he says, look, you live in peace and harmony. I will give you anything for you to tell me. What is it that I need to do in order to be like you? And the wise man said, not even if you give me your entire kingdom, you'll be able to pay me for what I'm going to give you. But I'm going to give it to you anyway, as long as you honor what I'm going to give you. And he said, sure, I will. So a few days later, the wise man goes back and gives the king a little beautiful carved box, and the king opens, and there is a ring, only a ring, and in the ring is written, these two shall pass. And the king didn't really understand what it meant, and the wise man told him, no matter what happens to you, good or bad, look at the ring and repeat to yourself, these two shall pass. And so Eckhart Tolle goes on to comment on the meanings of these two shall pass. And these two shall pass is a sentence that we use very commonly when we are going through some difficult times. We say, these two shall pass. But good things will also pass. Material experiences, good or bad, everything will pass. So there is a tremendous amount of power in understanding that things will pass. And the power of non-attachment allows you to live the present moment fully without fear of losing what it is. So maybe you, like me, have many people in your lives who were extremely important, perhaps your best friend at some point, and today you barely know where they are. These too shall pass. People pass. And there was a time in my life when I was a little younger that I suffered because I felt like, how come I'm not in touch with these people? They meant so much to me. And I came to the realization that they came to my life in a certain moment to play a certain role. And today I am who I am because I had all these people who came into my life. And so they remain with me. They are part of who I am. But life moves on. We need new opportunities, new experiences, new growth. And so new people need to come to our lives. So some leave to open the space for others to come. So this is the power of non-attachment. And the power of non-attachment gives us a greater perspective. We look at life from a broader view as opposed to being trapped within the situations. So it's like being an astronaut who for the first time leaves the planet and looks at the Earth and says, oh, wonderful, magnificent, astonishing, immense. But then he looks at the Earth in the context of the universe, and the Earth suddenly becomes nothing. So no attachment allows us to understand that what we live in the present moment, yes, is significant, is important, and at the same time is insignificant if you put that into the perspective of eternity and into the perspective of immortality. So there is a power of a broader vision and a broader understanding. So you might be dwelling with a very difficult problem at the present moment. It's huge, but in the course of many lives, it's just a little rock into your shoe, and that shoe will pass. All right, so we are tremendously empowered by the ability to non-resist, to non-judge, and to detach from the material things. That's a great source of power in our lives. But obviously, another great source of power comes from self-love. I don't have a clock right in front of me. I'm a little... How many? 15 minutes. 12 minutes. Okay, so we have plenty of time. Okay. So let's talk to finalize about self-love a little bit. So mastering others is strength. Mastering yourself is true power. So that's a great statement, right? So what we are here to do is to try to master yourselves and at some point become one of those wise men of Eckhart Tolle's stories. Okay, so I put three ideas on the top: self-love and awareness, self-love and forgiveness, and self-love and self-acceptance. So going along with awareness, let's look at what Eckhart Tolle says here. Whenever you are upset about an event, a person, or a situation, the real cause is not the event, person, or situation, but a loss of true perspective that only space can provide. I am never upset for the reason that I think it brings freedom from ego and opens a space for the essential to be felt. Okay, so self-love means taking care of yourself, right? So empowering yourself, mastering yourself. So every time that we are committed to this work of self-mastery, we are loving ourselves. It's very complicated. It's very difficult because it calls for awareness and it calls for self-compassion and for self-love. So he is one example, an opportunity for self-love and to understand what is going on with us. Whenever we're upset, we like to think that an event or a person is the source of our annoyance or our irritation or our suffering. But Eckhart Tolle tells us that that is not true. That whenever you're upset for none of these reasons. The reasons always were within ourselves, right? So we displace things for outside of ourselves. Once we displace things for outside of ourselves, we lose power. We lose power because we cannot change something that's outside of ourselves. But when we recognize that the problem is truly within ourselves, then we become empowered because now there is something that I can do about the situation. This is very difficult. This is very difficult because it's so much easier to believe that the problem is with someone else. So much easier, right? But it takes a spiritual courage to stop and to ask yourself, what is going on? Why am I so hurt? Why am I having such a difficult time with whatever is going on? So recently this week I asked my boss, I would like to have the office that's right next to mine and that is empty. And she said to me, no. Said to me, no. Rarely in my professional life I have heard a no. Rarely. It's something that I have usually gotten what I have asked for. I was surprised that she said no. And the reason I'm telling you this is because I'm struggling with this since it happens. I keep thinking to myself, should I send her another email? That's not my nature anyway. So, but maybe in this case. And so I need, and once you get into the habit of doing this, anytime you identify an annoyance, I'm not upset for the reason that I think. I'm not upset because of her, and I'm not upset because I didn't get the office. I need to find out, why am I upset? Why am I upset? Maybe I find that to be an unfair situation. And it's okay. We need to be upset and we need to be angry when unfair situations take place, okay? Martin Luther King, many of the people who have changed history, they had to have anger within themselves. Anger fuel positive things, right? But the problem is I need to see, why am I so annoyed with this situation? And then perhaps I need to do what I'm telling you. I need to go look for the wise man within myself and say, am I going to resist or not? Am I going to accept? Am I going to judge the situation or not? So these are, if you really think about it, and I really recommend that you read the book, these are little tools. Because a lot of times we say in our lectures, we should do this, we should do that. But it's important that we provide ourselves with those little tools that we can take home. It's like you go to a course, a continuing education course. You sit there, professional courses, 48 hours of course. The guy needs to give you something to do on Monday when you go back to your clinic, otherwise it's that, it's an avalanche of information. You go home and you can't process. You need to take something to start doing the work. The Americans that are in our center, they always ask us, all right, you told me all this beautiful lecture. Now what do I do? What do I do? How do I do this? You gave a beautiful lecture about humility. Okay, where do I start? Right? So it's important that we have those little exercises. So I take this and I've been applying to myself since I actually put this lecture together. So self-love and forgiveness, the power of forgiveness. Joana de Angelis has a book called, one of the latest ones, Be Happy Today, something like that. And there's a beautiful, one of the most beautiful chapter. I even remember the number, I don't know the title, chapter 29. And she talks about making mistakes and how making mistakes is part of our spiritual growth. And she says that a lot of times we'll commit mistakes over and over and over, because when the transformation, the miracle of transformation, which is the miracle of spiritual growth, is that shift takes place, it's solid. It's solid because it's made of a number of failures that led to reflection, that led to exhaustion, and that led to a deep and sincere desire to change. Because many times we say, I want to change. Really? Really? You know what we're talking about? So we do, but we really don't. We do at a cognitive level, but not at a visceral level. And so sometimes it is the sum of the failures, of the fall and get up again, fall and get up again, that will give us the strength for the solid change and for the miracle of transformation to take place. So self-love requires forgiveness, and self-love requires self-acceptance. And when I think of self-acceptance, I will go back to these figures. Self-acceptance. And self-acceptance makes me think of what makes them so powerful. And one of the things that makes them so powerful is the ability to stand for the things that they believe truly, to the values that they embrace. Many times we spiritists don't do that. We don't. Many times it's still because of shame. Many times spiritists are not in our relationships. I have experienced that in my life, and I'm still working on it. The power to stand to what you truly believe in face of a friendship that asks you to do something that is not in line with your principles, and you betray yourself because you need the other person. You need the other person's acceptance because you lack self-acceptance. So what makes those individuals incredibly powerful, what makes Malala incredibly powerful, you don't think that she feared the Taliban, that she feared for her life, but her self-love, her integrity was greater than her fear. That's what makes her so powerful. Made her so powerful that she went on talking about what is valuable for her, which is the education of women. In a country where women is pretty much nothing, right? Isn't that the same power that Paul of Tarsus had when he's about to be killed? And the soldier, aware of his grandiosity, the grandiosity of his soul, the power of his soul, trembles. And he looks at him and says, go ahead, my friend. Do your job. Do your job. Because I have done mine, and I'm going back to my Lord. And you're going to have to stay and deal with your conscience every single day. Do your job. The power of standing to what he believed. The power of being true to yourself. That's self-love. Every time we betray our values, we are lacking love towards ourselves. We are powerless. Because we still value more the acceptance that comes from the outside because of our inability of self-accept and self-love. So I hope that with that I convey some ideas of what true power is and how we can conquer true power, and most importantly, some little tips and exercises that we can start doing in order to achieve power and happiness. Thank you.